Hi, I'm Woody Mann. Welcome to Advanced Jazz Guitar with Larry Coryell. This one-hour Hot Licks masterclass was first released in 1990 in VHS format. Its popularity and classic status demanded that it be reissued as a DVD, and now it's available with several added features designed to help you get the most out of this wide-ranging lesson. Coryell has performed and recorded as a soloist and in collaboration with such renowned artists as John McLaughlin, Emily Remler, and Sonny Rollins, just to name a few. To learn more about Coryell's amazing body of work, check out the artist bio and discography sections of this DVD. In the presentation, Coryell explains the music theory behind his improvisations, delving into which scales work best when playing over specific chord progressions. He lets you know the options available to you as a soloist and gives many examples of his own improvised licks. An abundance of information on chords, scales, and improvisation is offered, and each musical example is numbered on screen, so you can easily refer to it in the transcription booklet provided with the DVD. Some of the transcriptions, which are in standard notation and tablature, even appear on screen as he plays. The DVD enhancements will assist you even more. For instance, there's a slow motion feature, and this allows you to play along with any of Coryell's examples at half speed, while the audio remains at standard pitch. You'll hear every note clearly and at the correct pitch, which will also help you fully grasp each idea. Additionally, there's a looping option that lets you repeat any example as often as you like to focus in on the phrases. You'll learn two Coryell tunes, Tender Tears and First Things First, as well as many of his licks, his techniques for comping, string bending, vibrato, and artificial harmonics. In addition to all of this, you'll find further inspiration when you watch Coryell's guitar duets with his son Julian, and by checking out the classic recordings mentioned in the suggested listening section. Learning jazz can be demanding, but there's much joy and musical knowledge to be gained in the process. Advanced Jazz Guitar with Larry Coryell will help you step in the right direction.
Hello and welcome to Larry Coryell video hot licks guitar lesson. And before we go any further, let's tune up. Okay, so here's an E, high E, flat. B, G, D, down a little bit, A, and low E. Let me hear you play an E chord. An E major chord is always a good way to tune up. What we have just done, we meaning myself, Larry Coryell, and my son, Julian Coryell, who I borrowed from his own rock and roll band to play the changes for me, was a song that I composed called Tender Tears. And the reason I wrote this was to help you understand how to play over changes. And this song has a lot of changes. And I'll just go through each section. There's an A section, a B section, which is the bridge, and then an A section that follows the bridge that is different from the first A section. And they have a lot of chords that you're going to encounter in standards, a lot of minor sevenths to dominant sevenths, a lot of diminished, a lot of close movement, as we'll see on the second ending. The first chord is a G minor 7 sharp 5. G minor 7 sharp 5, and that's a substitute for E flat major 7, or just E flat major. You'll hear how close. There's E flat major, the E flat voiced on the top of the 8th fret of the 3rd string, and the G minor 7 sharp 5 is like this. And then, in order to emulate the close chromatic type movement of jazz standard bass lines, the low 6th string goes like this: G to F sharp or G flat, F sharp diminished. It's a very, very common type of chord change. So we go G minor 7 sharp 5, F sharp diminished, to the 2-5 of E flat major, F minor, to B flat 7. This chord form is also technically a 9th. A lot of times when I call out chords, I'll say B flat 7, and I won't add all the embellishments just for sake of brevity. Anyway, 2-5-1 to E flat, F minor 7 to B flat 7. Now we go to the 2-5-1 to A flat, B flat minor 7 to E flat 7 flat 9. To A flat, and then 1 beat apiece, A flat minor 7 to D flat 7. And then we're going to go to what is called the 1, 6, 2, 5 are kind of the cadence of the first section, and usually, and the melody goes da 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 da, but that's the 1, 6, 2, 5, literally. E flat to C to F to B flat. But we're going to substitute for the 1, we're going to go back to G on the bottom, only this time we're going to have a dominant 7 sharp 5. This is also related to an augmented. Now the 6th chord is going to be a raised 9 sharp 5. Raised 9 sharp 5 to F13. This particular voicing, I have the F on the top. You can do it like this also. 2, 5 on E flat. And then the first ending is another variation on the 1, 6, 2, 5. It's like this. G minor 7, sharp 5 to F sharp 13. That's a substitute for the 6. And the substitute for the 2, which normally is F minor 7, is going to be B major 7. And the substitute for the 5, which is normally B flat 7, is going to be E major 7. Something like that. Now, let me just go back a little bit. Not only in jazz do you need to know chord changes, absolutely, that's the most important thing. When I was struggling or trying to learn how to play over changes, that was my biggest problem. It still is. You also need to know the melody. The melody is very simple, and when I was performing it at the top of the show, I was taking a lot of liberties with the melody, but what we've done for you is written it out. It's very simple. As a matter of fact, let's just play the A section. I'll play the melody very simply. 3, 4. That was the first ending. So, important to know what the melody is doing, as well as the changes, because if you only play the correct scale for each change, it won't be as nice as if you intersperse that information with the information of the melody. So let's start letter A again, and I'll try to show you what I mean. 3, 4. That. So what I did, I used my knowledge of the melody, especially in the very first, when I went, that's a takeoff on. This is what makes it interesting. If you develop a solo vocabulary with the melody in mind as well as the changes, then you can make, more hipper improvisations. Now, the first ending, we had an interesting variation on the 1, 6, 2, 5 when we went like this. The G to the F sharp to the B to the E. The second ending, we go to the tonic, and then we go A flat. This is actually an A flat major 6 to A diminished. Again, the emphasis is to get close bass movement. This is E flat 6 with a B flat on the bottom. The root is here. And then we go A half diminished, and the half diminished really is the parent of a B flat Ionian scale. And then we're going to go to the 2, 5, 1, a G flat, and of course that's A flat minor D flat. Now the bridge, again, keeping with trying to get the bass moving in just half steps or whole steps. Let me do the melody for the bridge. Up a half step. That's enough. So again, very simple. But when you start to improvise on it, you can do a little bit more. 3, 4. Okay, that's enough. Here's an example of what you can play on the bridge. The first chord being the G flat major, and then it goes G diminished. You can do the simple diminished there, or you can do the 8-tone diminished scale, also known as the 1+2. Something like that. So you've got, for that first change, the G flat and then the diminished. You add something if you want. And then you have the A flat minor. And then the A diminished. And then you have the B flat minor. And then the C minor to the F7 to the B flat major. Now what I did, I flat nined, as you probably heard. Flat nined the F7 to the B flat. And then the whole thing, 2 5s 1 to D, so we go. And even on the E minor 7 to the A7, you can just play D Ionian. Play the E minor 7 to A7. And then continue on. Minor 7, diminish, minor 7, 2 5 1 of G flat, 2 5 1 E flat. Okay, that's enough. So you have a lot of close movement. Into the D. That's the 2 5 1 of G flat. There's the G flat, and then back to letter A with the 2 5 1 of E flat. Now, going back to letter A, instead of repeating the first letter A section, it goes along like it's going to repeat, and then it changes. Let's just do from the double bar, starting with the G minor 7 sharp 5. A half diminished. So that's an extended letter A following the bridge, and what happens when we get to the A half diminished, this kind of gives the song another kind of color. It kind of takes it to an ending. And again, remember that any half diminished parent key is going to be a half step above the root. A half diminished, B flat is going to be the parent key, B flat major. But at the same time, the actual meaning of the A half diminished has a lot of C minor 6. You can understand that if you realize that C minor 6th, C, E flat, G, A, G, E flat, C, is also related to the parent key of B-flat Ionian. All those notes are in the B-flat Ionian, but you've got to arpeggiate that to get more of the meaning of the A half diminished. And then it goes, of course, to A-flat minor to D-flat 7. You could just play a D-flat, what is known as a Mixolydian mode. Parent key actually is G-flat Ionian. You can also look at it by arpeggiating. This is very, very basic. The A-flat minor 7. Ba-da-da-da-da. It works very well. And then the next chord is, what's the next chord? G minor?
G minor, 7 sharp, G sharp, G minor,
And let me just. Then we're returning to the F sharp diminished. We have this diminished again. All these diminished. Actually, I find the 8-tone diminished scale, or the 1+2, to be more modern sounding rather than going. That's nice though, but you can go. And this scale, you can do many, many things with it. Sometimes, what I like to do, instead of starting on a half step, starting the phrase with a half step like this, I'll start with a whole step. First example, I went from D to E flat. Second example, I just started on the E flat and went to the F. Like that. Two, 5, 1 of E flat again. Now this looks like the top of an E flat 9 chord, and this is interesting. On the chart, it's a G half diminished. G half diminished, parent key, of course, would be A flat Ionian. But if you understand, and I'm sure you do, the relationship between E flat 9, that's the 5 chord of an A flat major. So you know that it's all in the same tonality, but again, you have to define more of the meaning. Kind of wistful. That kind of a thing. G half diminished to C7 flat 9. Now I didn't really talk too much about the 7 flat 9s, but a quick rule of thumb is to suspend a diminished arpeggio or diminished triad, the root of which is a half step above the root of the chord. In other words, the chord is C, 7, flat 9. C is the bottom. Now, if you have a C sharp diminished triad above that, that all works. So the diminished is a half step above the root. There's some other alternations on that, but for right now, we'll just stick to that as a general rule of thumb. Then we'll get a 2, 5, 1 of E flat. And then we get to what's, the turnaround or the cadence. And this is again as a substitution for 1, 6, 2, 5. I am at the C sharp 7 flat 5, right? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I know so. This is the substitute for the 1. We do the 6. And instead of, we do the 6 literally with the dominant 7 sharp 5. And instead of F minor 7, we stay consistent with the chord pattern. We go B7 flat 5. Actually, while I'm on this, let me quickly show you what scale will fit with that. The jazz minor scale, the 5th above any dominant 7th flat 5 is going to work. Here's the C sharp 7 flat 5. You can go to the 5th, G sharp, and play a jazz minor scale, which is just like a major scale, only you play the minor third instead of a major third. Of course, there are many variations. like and the major seventh interval, which is a G natural, here's the G natural, from the G sharp, catches the flat 5. So that's how you get that. And actually, when you get to the C7 sharp 5, C7, C7, of course, here's the 10th or the 3rd, sharp 5, you can do a jazz minor starting from C sharp. Play a C7 sharp 5. See how that works? And then the next chord is a B7 flat 5. And we can do the F sharp jazz minor. And then the B flat 7, you can kind of do an F minor 7. It's all out of an E flat scale anyway. So if you go back and look at the way we were improvising, the way I was soloing single note, I was trying to show through my playing that not only am I familiar with the chord changes and all the scales that go there, but familiar with the melody, and I hope mature enough to construct something that has a fair amount of notes in it, but at the same time retains respect for the melody, and that kind of balance gives you a good jazz solo. Now we're going to do a blues. We're going to start the blues by doing a vamp from C sharp 7 raised 9 to D flat 9, just to get into the mood, and then we're going to break into the blues. It's called First Things First, and the head or the melody is going to be played in a straight 8 time, and then we're going to go into swing. I'm going to solo a little bit, and then Julian's going to solo a little bit, and while he's soloing, I will give you an example of some comping that you can do, kind of a combination of Django Reinhardt style and some more modern type walking bass lines with the chords, that kind of thing. And here we go. So let's start with the vamp. a kind of dominant seventh blues as opposed to just a minor blues, which is a whole other animal, whole other entity. And there are a lot of scales in this blues that are used in the first tune that we did on this video, the ballad. And I think you probably noticed the one that I like to use a lot is, again, the 8-tone diminished scale, or the 1+2. And you might have noticed when we got to the 4 chord that I liked to use this. I like to go right into this 1+2, right on the 4 chord. I didn't even, sometimes I wouldn't even play the F7 because it's so close, the diminished. So closely related that I would just start with that scale as these changes, the F7 to the F sharp diminished, were going by, and it still works. All of that works on that. What we started with on the vamp, C7 raised 9 to D flat 9, I was doing minor arpeggios starting from the 5th of each root. First root was C, so I did minor arpeggios from G. And then the second root, of course, was D flat, so I did minor arpeggios from A flat. So I was getting this kind of thing. And then, as it started to build up, I started to break out of this particular specific pattern and stop thinking about fitting the exact scale with the chord and started to just think more chromatically in some cases to evoke a different kind of emotion. If you get the chromatic phrases going smoothly against any kind of repeated pattern, it evokes a certain kind of what I think to be interesting emotion. And then I broke into almost random intervals where the object was to create a really outside type phrase. You can do this with anything, and as long as you're not really shucking and just repeating a very restrictive pattern, you can use that to propel you outside of the specific harmony that you're working with. Let's just do a little bit more on the vamp and I'll show you what I mean. 3, 4. Just like that. I was just chromatic and I found myself coming down as he was coming to the D flat to an A flat note to end my phrase. That kind of thing takes a lot of practice, but if you spend a lot of time with your instrument, what you can do is to record a vamp like this, or any kind of 1 chord or 2 chord, 3 chord repeated pattern, and start really going outside of the changes. Because if you listen to a lot of modern soloists, their secrets have to do with playing a half step away from the required tonality. I'm playing D flat when I'm in C, or half step below, to get those dissonances. Now you all know that a dissonance is things like this, and as you experiment with this, you will start to find dissonances that work as opposed to dissonances that don't work. Let me see. Let me see if I can find a dissonance that doesn't work. Play the vamp for me again. Actually, that works. Yeah, I was trying to find something that didn't work, but actually the B notes really were strong because it's the major 7th of C, and that's always nice. Any major 7th is nice. And it's also the dominant 7th of the D flat. But enough of that. That's fun. You can really get free with that. Sometimes I'll just work on a pattern, stretching maybe 4 frets, 1, 2, 3, well, this is like a 5 fret stretch. And then somewhere in there I'll do a 6th 6 fret stretch to get some variety. And sometimes 7, almost like getting, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like this. And this produces some very interesting, I tell you what doesn't work is something like this. That sounds too much like an exercise. That's the point I was trying to find earlier. If it sounds too much like an exercise to you, then throw that one out. But again, experiment a little bit and try to find dissonances that are exciting and are musical. And you'll start to learn how to select the good dissonances, the ones that are effective, and throw away the ones that don't work, like this one. I used to do that a lot. I don't do that anymore. Now, to get into the line, what I've done, I've written out the line for you. It's just a mixolydian thing where we, C7. It's kind of a post-bebop type of thing. And when we get to the 4 chord, as I mentioned earlier, when we go, we use that scale that I like so much, the 1+2 or the 8-tone diminished scale. Now, when we get to this bar, what is it? I guess that's the 7th bar or something. It's just before the turnaround. Now, right here, let's see. This phrase, this comes from it comes from, I believe it's called a D harmonic minor. Technically it would be a D harmonic minor scale, but it's a good way to cover the 3 minor 7 to the 6 dominant 7 sharp 5. Yeah, that's a D harmonic minor scale. Let me just check myself on this. Yeah, and those kind of phrases are very familiar. If you listen to some of your favorite jazz soloists, all the way from Charlie Parker to John Coltrane, the way they negotiate a 3 minor 7, 3 minor 7 flat 5 to a 6 dominant 7 sharp 5 will use that kind of scale, and they'll use that kind of phrasing. And at the end, this is kind of interesting just to show you how all musical rules are made to be broken when I'm going to the 2-5-1. Just play right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. Again, 3, 4. Oh, I see. You altered the voicing to make it go with that E note. Very good. Sometimes, depending on who's comping for me, sometimes it's a piano player. All they see really is the D minor 7 to the G7. Da, da, da. Well, yeah, okay, but you're going to play a 13th there. Yeah, that's nice. So Julian did a nice thing. He caught the melody there with the G13. But then continue on. Da, da, da. That literally doesn't fit. It's a C Mixolydian scale against these 9th chords, C 9th, up a minor 3rd to E flat 9th, and then down a half step. And they literally don't, the notes don't literally fit in each chord, but it works because of the movement. The line is going up, the single note line is going up, and the chord progression basically goes down. And there are a lot of little things like that that I discovered only through experience playing with players much better than myself. There were rules that could be broken and rules that need to be observed. Now, one of the rules that needs to be observed a lot when you're playing a blues is that you got to play the blues, and every once in a while you got to bend a few strings and get funky and stuff like that. And I do the standard, what I learned when I was in college, kind of bending where I use more than one finger on the same string to be able to get more control over the bend. There are a lot of other artists who do this and teach this much better than I do, but usually I use my 1st, 2nd, and 3rd finger. If I'm going to bend up to a C note, I put the 3rd finger on the 11th fret of the 2nd string, and using 2 and 1 on frets 10 and 9 respectively, give that a little extra power. And when I get it up there sometime, because I have these 2 extra fingers, I can do a little vibrato if I want. Sometimes I'll bend a minor 3rd. Well, there, and I bent from C up to E flat from the 13th fret of the 2nd string. Sometimes I'll bend from the key of C, 12, 13, 14, on the 15th fret. I'll bend a minor third from the G up to the B flat. But unlike a lot of newer players, who I suppose because they are playing on really light strings, they just bend with one finger. I didn't learn that way, so I just wanted to share that with you, the way I do those bends. Now, when we were playing, Julian was comping for me and I was soloing. I was doing a lot of stuff that I got from John Coltrane, phrases like this that I heard Coltrane do from his period in the middle 60s. And this I find to be a really nice exposition of the Mixolydian mode. Again, that's the kind of if I'm going to do an F Mixolydian idea, I also think E flat major 7. Yeah, hit a F9 for me. I'm arpeggiating an E flat major 7. Again, do it a little slower. I'll do it down an octave again. And you can use that a lot and find a lot of variations because you're thinking F Mixolydian. You're thinking E flat major 7. This is all E flat. With a sixth in there. And you're also thinking C minor. C minor. So look at the connection between, when you're on the 4 chord of a C blues, look at the connection between the C minor, the E flat major 7, and the F Mixolydian. And they're all very close kissing cousins. The reason I use these particular bits of information for my playing is that each time I think of that particular color on a 4 chord, it gives me a little bit different kind of stimulus for an idea. I was doing a few things with octaves. I think I did a few things with octaves. Let me show you how I do octaves. I don't think this was the way Wes Montgomery, the master, did octaves, but taught to me by one of my early teachers, Gabor Szabo. If you're going to do octaves, on strings 6 and 4, I use fingers 2 and 4. On strings 5 and 3, also 2 and 4. And then I switch to left-hand fingers 1 and 4 when I do octaves on strings 4 and 2 and strings 1 and 3. So you go, there's that fingering, and then I'll do it again. It's leading with the first finger here, and then leading with the second finger. It just saves a little extra space. And if you're doing octaves any other way, and it's working, please use your own technique. But if you're having problems with octave accuracy, you might want to try this. Now, the other thing that we were doing, when Julian was taking his solo, I was doing some comping that to me is a cross between the old Django Reinhardt chunk, chunk, chunk and the more modern type of jazz guitar comping, which purely speaking, you actually put the pick down and go. So I do that, but I also have the pick, so I get the bass lines with the pick and some of the upper notes with my fingers like this. I'll just go real slow. F. You can have a lot of fun with this, composing bass lines. got away from staying mostly on strings 6, 4, and 3, and with this one, using the pick and fingers together, doing some inside chords, like on strings 5 through 2. This D minor, 7 sus4, and then I went straight to an F major 7, an F sharp diminished, very vanilla type voicing, and then a G sus. Now let me just clarify, my shorthand for this kind of chord where we're suspending the 4th of C, the F triad, over the 5th is a G sus, like this. There are other kinds of sus chords, you know. This is like another kind of sus chord, but we're going to ignore that. This is just shorthand for a G sus. Call it a G sus. Any kind of F over G, that kind of thing. That's how I do the comping for Win Julian. You might want to run the tape back and check out not only when I was comping, but his very fine soloing. Now, at the end of my solo, I was doing a little thing which I call artificial harmonics. These were taught to me by Lenny Breau, and I'll just show you very basically how it works. If you can't see this finger, my right hand pinky, realize that this is doing a lot of the work. In other words, when I do the simplest form of artificial harmonics, I take my right hand pinky and I have the nail on it, grown out a little bit, and I do an upstroke on the 4th string like this. Then I take the pick and do an artificial harmonic like this at the 12th fret of the 6th string. So we get this kind of movement, strings 4 to 6, normal note, harmonic note. A little out of tune. Now we'll do 3 to 5, 3 normal note, 5 harmonic. 2 and 4, 1 and 3. Let me just put a little more treble on here so you can hear this. The last 2 notes were artificial harmonics all by themselves. And you can, I was getting into some stuff here like this. Picking at the same time, picking a normal note and a harmonic note at the same time. And it's, again, the pinky of your right hand is picking one of the notes. There's 2 notes being played at the same time, like that. And during my solo, I was doing this kind of a thing. Now what I want you to do is take A minor, 7, sus4, all the way across, and do the same thing that we did here, and transfer it up to here. And then, without moving anything else, don't move anything else, you can put your 3rd finger on the 7th fret of the 1st string and get the 9th in there. And now you have this you have a half step interval now between the normal note on the 1st string and the artificial harmonic on the 3rd. So you go, and then you can do a pull off like that. I'll do it real slow. This time I put my 2nd finger on the 6th fret of the 2nd string to get a little bit different pull-off note. And then you can get more sophisticated chords, and as long as they've got 6 strings to them, they'll play a little melody. Like this. Something like this. Or even where you use your thumb to cover strings 6 and 5. Here's a D flat major 9. Then we sharp 11. And soloing with a rhythm section. the end of our lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Julian. Thank you very much.